But anyway, welcome, Roy Dopp, to Advaita Talks.
Cool. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So what I'd like to do, Roy, now, of course, when I'm going into your biography, we might say initially that that has no relevance. All right.
Yeah,
But,
well, we can say that it's describing the dream character.
Yeah, I like that. All right.
Yeah.
So if you could you just walk the viewer through your spiritual life as a youth and how that developed as you got older? Did it at a certain point become more intense? Was there a spiritual background when you were growing up? What was that like?
Yeah, well, like pretty much everyone in North America, I'm pretty sure, grew up Christian, raised Christian. Wasn't really sure what that meant though. I mean, I was just kind of told, by my mom primarily. My dad wasn't really too religious at all. Kind of just went along with the flow, I guess. And then as I started getting older and started being able to think for myself, I just couldn't really put it all together. Like what I was being told, what I was learning at Bible camp, and all this stuff from church, and all the televangelists that my mom would watch on TV. It just wasn't making sense. Like it just wasn't quite fitting together for me. Like
Was there a particular denomination that your parents were?
I went to a Baptist church.
Okay. Are there many Baptists in Canada?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just went to church for an hour a week. And it was interesting. My mom didn't go. She made me go to church, and then she'd watch like Jim Bakker on TV. So it'd be like, okay. So
that's funny.
So yeah, I just never quite could fit it all together. It just never quite clicked with me. So when I turned 30, for whatever reason, I just needed to figure everything out. Like the big questions, why are we here? What are we supposed to do? What is God? What's death and life? Like everything, the big ones, right?
Yeah.
So I was drawn to read a bunch of books, and interestingly, I guess, or not, the book that really blew my mind open was The Dancing Wooly Masters by Gary Zukov.
Yeah.
And it's a science book, and it was my first introduction really to quantum physics.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was reading it, at one point I looked at my hand and I waved my hand in front of my face, and I realized that it wasn't a separate object moving through space. It was more like particles just popping in and out in a certain sequence, just like pixels on a screen. And my body was not a separate entity moving around in empty space. And that just, wow. And then I really needed to start figuring out what the hell it was. If I wasn't my body, and if my body wasn't a separate object moving through space, then what the hell is it all? So then that really exploded into reading a bunch more books.
Okay. And that experience of watching your hand, that was in just a sober state, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was not under any influence.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just reading a book, and I didn't see tracers or anything. It was just more of an intellectual, like an understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of it. Like
yeah. It's kind of, it's funny that you say this. I remember going to, I had a few years of college. I didn't finish, but, and I had this one teacher. She was really great. She was an elderly lady, and I think it was I'm not sure if it was history or what the class was, but she had this really interesting point. She said, I don't know why the Christians are so afraid of evolution. They should really be afraid of quantum physics.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, and it sounds like that's really cool. I love how you kind of had this experience of just applying the principle in your in terms of your physical perception, and it's true. It's like we're just kind of in this sea of energies in different vibrations, and that's all it is. It's just varying vibrations of energy at different levels, and we think it's so real and concrete. But anyway, so you started reading all these books, and how long did that period last, and what were some of the more important books in that period?
So one was John Shelby Spong, I think his name was, a Catholic bishop, I think.
Uh-huh.
And it was Why Christianity Must Change or Die. So that was one that was chipping away at that belief system. And then it was How to Know God by Deepak Chopra.
Yep.
And then it was the Dancing Woolly Masters. And then I started, I read probably 36 books within 2 years, so I can't name them all, but
sure,
chipping away, and then that really started getting me into meditation. So I just started sitting regularly and just meditating. And I quickly started just getting all this, I guess, kind of understanding or whatever. And then I started writing my first book, Conversations with Myself, and I self-published that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And can you describe for us a little bit how you did your meditation, just the technical approach that you applied?
Yeah, well, everything that I do is very intuitive. I've just been that way for whatever reason. Not much for taking instruction from other people, just kind of winging it myself. So,
man after my own heart.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way I roll, I guess. But so I just kind of intuitively just fell into self. Like I can understand it now, and I understand how I can use terminology now that may relate to other people. But intuitively, I just went to that space between your thoughts. I just fell into self or being really, really quickly. Like I would come back to the breath. Like the breath is always the go-to, right? Like it's always there. It's pretty steady. You can always, if you start finding yourself in la land, you can always come back to the breath and then use the breath to get that deeper level of just being. So basically I just sat and just didn't think and just looked, just watched. And that's how it started.
That's interesting. And would you say that over time there was a like I think you've mentioned this to me before, is kind of holding the space between thoughts? And do you think that is that gradually what began to manifest, say, intuitively with you? And as that, if there can be called a progression, does it seem as though that space gets longer, or your ability to stay in it lasts longer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it more frequently too. Like the periods of time will become longer and longer and more often. Like you will notice that you're off in la la land more often and just, okay, now. So that's basically fundamentally the practice for me is now it's constant for me now. So my practice is like constant. There's no meditation. Like now I don't go somewhere and sit and meditate. Like it's always that.
Okay, now this is really fascinating to me. So at some point, what was an activity that required initiative on your part, at some point it transitioned into a natural state? Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I can't put a date on it. Like it wasn't some sort of enormous enlightenment experience or something like that. It's been a very gradual process for me.
Yeah.
But things have been falling away. Like the normal, like I was in a relationship with a woman that I thought I'd be in for the rest of my life. I got a new job, a really good paying job that I didn't really like that much. So I thought I was pretty settled, okay, I got the mate, I got the job, not really happy all the time, but periods of happiness. And my practice was still developing, and at that point, I was just sitting in bliss for like periods of time, just laying there. And my girlfriend, I don't think she was quite digging it very much, because I'd just lay around and just like just sit there in bliss, right? So I don't know if she was digging it. So within a month, I lost the job, I got fired, and I got dumped by that person. So, and I just accepted it. I went back to my old job, which was a wildfire firefighter, so wildland firefighter, and where I can sit for I hope my boss doesn't hear me, but I can sit around for 95% of the time and just practice, just be at work and wait. Forest fires don't really happen that often, so you just kind of sit around and wait for them. And now, things happened beyond my control, beyond my thinking mind control, to allow me to just be more and more and more. And just now I'm just enveloped in being all the time. And it's just...
So in other words, these events like losing your job and this girl leaving you, these major events were out of your control, obviously, and it was as if these apparently external events were funneling you in this direction where it was easier to simply be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I can't even describe how grateful I am to whatever that higher power is that knew my true desires, because it's just everything's so completely wonderful and effortless now. It's just it's amazing. And all I really did was stick to the practice as best I could. That's all I really did, was just keep coming back as much as I could to that thought-free state and just watch my own mind and just watch and watch and watch. And it just unfolded and continues to unfold.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I wonder if you kind of outlined this, but could you say a little bit more about the way this recognition... Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I lost you for a couple seconds, but you're back now.
Okay, great. So could you say a little bit about the way this recognition progressed and how it affected the way you relate to the apparently external world? In other words, many people are acting in a way that they perceive themselves as separate, distinct individuals, and you could say there's a kind of there's a dynamic of opposition in the way they interact with the world, and I have the impression that for you that has faded, if not gone completely, And I wonder if you could describe that for people, because, of course, from an external viewer's perspective, you look like a normal guy. There's no difference about you. You're still doing things in the physical world just like everybody else. What's different about this state of recognition that you're in now compared to the state that you were in prior to this recognition?
So I have a different perspective now. I have a different perspective of what's happening. So, how do I put it? I'm the watcher now. Like, I'm the witness. I'm in connection with what Ramana Maharshi would say is self. So it's what is experiencing this. It's not, I'm not the body, I'm not my thoughts. But I'm observing. It's the analogy of watching a movie in a theater is really beneficial, I think. So this is exactly like that. Like, exactly.
In other words, the physical world, what we think is so concrete and so real, is for you is very much like just watching a movie.
Yeah, it's not fundamental reality. It's not like that's the problem. That's the cause of pretty much all the problems, is that we take this physical realm to be fundamental reality, and we keep coming back to this as being reality. This is me. Your name, enter your name here, is my identity. But that's a misinterpretation of who you really are, of your true self. And that's what causes all the problems. And that's what causes the appearance of separation and all the problems and vexations and suffering, is this misidentification of your true self. So if you just really adopt the role of the witness, so that's when you're watching a movie, you can get really involved into the plot, right? Like a really good, well-scripted, well-acted movie can really draw a person in, right?
Yeah.
You can laugh, you can cry, you can get turned on. Like, you're living vicariously through the characters on the screen. And that's exactly what's happening here in this divine movie. People are really getting wrapped up and believe that they are the character, your name here. Right?
Right.
Like, how the divine script writer has got to be a pretty good script writer, right? And a pretty good actor too. So it's conceivable to get really caught up, that it would be possible to get so caught up in the divine movie or the divine play that you temporarily lose awareness of self. That's what we do in a movie all the time. We temporarily get lost. We forget who we are. We forget who our true self is, and we're living the movie. And that's exactly what's happening here. So when you start recognizing that, and that it's your mind and all of your thoughts, I am this, I did that, I want, I, whatever, creates this fictional character of your name here, then you can start just watching it unfold, just like you're watching a movie on a screen. And that's what detachment means. Detachment means I recognize that. I recognize that it's just a movie, and I can be as involved in it as I want. I don't need to get carried away. I can have constant awareness of the audience.
Yeah. Now, it's really interesting. There does appear to be one slight distinction in that instead of watching a movie where all the characters are on a screen, you're watching a movie that you also are participating in.
Yeah, it's a very interactive movie.
It's like what's the new technology where you have artificial realities? So it's like you're now. Can you tell me a little bit about this notion of as you shift from perceiving yourself as a distinct individual into, let's say, your true self, which is not limited to body or thought, how does that affect the way you relate to other people, right? So they're no longer other, are they? And can you describe that a little bit? Because of course you're still doing, you still appear to be doing things in the physical world. You still get up and you have cereal in the morning. You go outside. You do activities. You still perform action. So you're not limited to this body. You're sensing yourself as something different. How is that affecting the way you interact with these apparently different people and world phenomena?
I guess one of the things is that I don't get really. Okay, there's a sense of just complete wonder all the time. So you just observe things happen and people the actions of people and phenomena. You just watch it kind of with a sense of awe and wonder. And you see how everything is working in perfect harmony all the time at a deeper level than the thought process. So when I see the occurrences and phenomena that's happening from what I'll just go ahead and call it the enlightened state, there's nothing but enlightenment. So, and my body is also moving in that complete harmony.
Like one thing I'm curious about is
it's very hard to put into words.
Yeah. And perhaps it'd be good to say you can't really define this. You can't. Words are not.
It's an experience. It's not an experience. It's kind of like you can't really. It's an experience, but it's not a separate experience. It is everything happening at once. But the mind can't comprehend that because to the mind, things happen in order. You connect dots. The mind is connecting dots, but when all the dots are flashing on and off at the same time, the thinking mind doesn't go there. And that's why it's so important to transcend the thinking mind, because you won't get there. You just can't get there by reading a book or trying to intellectualize it and trying to figure it out with your mind. That is exactly what's keeping you from the experience.
I love this point, Roy, because I think there are many out there who talk about these principles, and those that are in what we're talking about, those who are expressing what we're talking about fully are much more rare. So there's a lot of people talking about it. So I may not name this channel Advaita Talk for that reason. I think something like Advaita Talk for the Walk or something like that. But can you tell the viewer you still have ideas that come into your head, you still have thoughts that enter your head, and you still have motions, right? Emotions. You still have emotions. But would you say that the overall experience of your life is perhaps changed in the sense that you're no longer detached to specific phenomena as much? I mean, I've heard some people say that they're actually capable of more emotion because there's a freedom to it.
See, this is where I have a bit of a difference here, is that I don't experience much for emotion. I don't, especially the quote unquote negative emotions, I don't experience sadness or see, I can't say that I don't experience anger because I'll make a wrong turn and I'll swear, but it goes away right away. It comes and it goes. Everything, any type of emotion, really just kind of comes and goes. because, now this is interesting, because anything that you can label as arising and passing, well, that's not it. So if it arises and passes, and that's any type of an emotion, like your typical ordinary, like I hear a lot of people throwing the L word around, like love, 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 love. And that's all fine and fine and good, but if it's love that's relative to something else, and if it's a love that passes, if it's a feeling that arises and passes, that's not it. Whatever it is, like whatever self-realization, liberation, the end of samsara, whatever you want to call it, love in that term, like as some sort of a feeling of chemicals or whatever you want to call it, if it goes away, that's not it. So what bliss is a really, really good word to use, but it's, to me, it's interchangeable with love. So when I'm in a state of complete awareness, in contact with self, it's very much like love. Like if a person, everyone knows what it's like to have that feeling of love. You look at a baby, you love that, or you look at, it's usually another person, right? Like someone that's really, really close to you, and you get that feeling. But the love that I'm talking about is kind of the agape love, I guess you could call it. And it's steady. It's not, and it's also not love relative to anything else. It's just, and this is where I really feel that saying God is love, like I get that now. I never used to be able to get that. Like okay, God is this feeling that I have for this other person. But it's deeper than that. It's constant. Like it's that Sat Chit Ananda that is being, consciousness, bliss. It's you. That's what you are. You are the love. When you get in contact with self and just abide there, the feeling is very comparable to love. But again, it's absolute, meaning that it's not relative to anything else. It's not relative to any kind of external conditions. It's what's inside.
Right, right.
So that's really, and it's, again, words like perfect contentment I like to use, or absolute happiness. Again, absolute in that it's not relative to anything external. It's always there.
Yeah. And I think it's great. The Satchitananda, being awareness bliss, it's a great reference, and there's a reason why it took three, words to try to point to what this is.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm curious about, it's sometimes said that a realized teacher, or I get the term, I never pronounce this very well, but jnana, has the effect of mirroring others, if you will, who come into the presence. So do you find that because you are as detached as you are, it makes it so that when people who are fully engaged in the movie when they come up against you, there's nothing for them to be polar against. You see what I'm saying? Within the movie, between supposed separate individuals who are interacting, there's all these potentials for polarities and opposition. But because you're not playing the game, if you will, it takes out one pole. And I'm wondering if you experience that at all in the way you interact with people in the world.
Yeah, if there's nothing there to push against, then there's nothing there to fight against, I guess. Like, it's just yeah, I don't seem to have problems with people. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't, this sounds a lot like a lot of people might go, ugh, but I don't find myself engaging with people that much. Like, especially at that what I call the superficial movie level.
Right.
I don't talk about the car that I buy or the RRSPs or like any of that stuff. I just don't. Like, it's just, I don't care. I don't care. It's just, and the more that you talk about it, the more you focus on it, the more you get engaged in the movie, the more real it appears. The more focus you put on something, the more real it appears. So, what was your question again?
Well, I love that. I love that. I think you answered it, and I love that last point. The more you focus on something, the more real it appears. And the corollary to that, or with that, is that the more you focus on the self, the more the self becomes the reality.
So, like, I no longer care if I'm sitting somewhere where there's other people and the movie's going along, and I'm just sitting there staring at nothing with this little smirk on my face. You know those Buddha statues that he has that tiny little smirk? I go around, I sit like that, like I'm like that all the time. Like I got that little smirk, and I know it's there because my cheeks start hurting after a while. But it's just like, I don't care anymore. Like, I'll just sit there in bliss, and people can go around doing what they do.
All
And
right.
Yeah.
Can you tell me then? I mean, I imagine like I know you like oatmeal, so you still eat oatmeal, and you might, like, what I'm getting at is, do you still have some preferences, and how is it that it seems like if you were to really take this to the extreme, you might just sit down and stop moving and not do anything. So why is it you still are motivated to interact or to perform action or to do anything or to eat anything? Or why does that still keep going?
See, why is the worst question ever? Like, why is the terrible? It's terrible. Why? Like,
All right.
I don't.
That's a great point. I mean, why is water wet? That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. There's no more sense of a person doing it. Like, it's a doing, if you want to describe it as something, but the very description of it brings in these questions. So abidance in it is almost completely different than trying to explain it. It's really, really hard to get out of the labyrinth of mind. Like, it's really like, and I really encourage people to start watching mind. Watch your own mind and notice how it creates everything. Everything. It is the creative force of reality. So once you start recognizing how mind works, you'll start recognizing how it's all just a manufacture. Like, there's a different reality. There's a different perspective that is just pure, that's beyond thought. And once you start getting there, you'll get it. The questions won't arise anymore, because the answer is the experience. The answer to all minds, blah, 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 is transcendent of mind. Like, you know what I mean? Like, mind is searching. Look around you everywhere. Mind is always searching for something. People are, like, everywhere you go, there's a screen, there's a book, there's music playing. Everywhere you go, just watch. Mind is always focused on something external. Like, everything that we do, everything, Paul, is our jobs. It's everything that we do. That's this realm. It's external. Mind is focused on something else, and it always wants to explain. It always just wants to keep churning. So that's questions come in like why, who, what, like all these questions come in. But when you transcend it, that's the answer.
Yeah, yeah. You reminded me of a line. Pamela Wilson is an Advaita teacher I really like, and she said something once in a satsang that was, why is thought so compelling? Why is thought so compelling? And I like that. And you're also reminding me of, Ramana Maharshi's technique of asking, who am I? And maybe you could talk a little bit about this practice, if you will, which I think you've essentially described. Again, you can't really define it, but it's like if you start asking yourself, who am I, and pointing your attention to your true nature, then you begin to see where thought comes in, and it can, at least initially, it derails your attempt to focus on the self. But every thought that comes in is something that can be discarded, and you can come back to the self. Every thought, and it can seem if you're in the movie, it can seem as though all of these thoughts are very different, and that they're affecting different emotions, and they're creating new trains of thought and going off in different directions. And yet every thought, regardless of how diverse thought can be, every thought can be set aside, and you can come back to the self.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can lump thought into one set, like just thought, the thought process.
Yeah.
And if you do that and just say, I'm going to discard the thought process.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what that's like. Let's see if it's a possibility that I can actually start getting out of the thought process itself. Like, maybe that's what the problem is. Like, there seems to be a lot of problems going on with humankind. Like, I don't want to, shock anyone here. I don't want to burst people's bubbles, but maybe something's not quite right here. So maybe it's the thought process itself. You never hear that? You never hear that. Like, let's take a good, honest, objective look at the thought process. You never hear that. It's like, because I think mind wants to just keep churning away, right? So yeah, it's absolutely, if you just discard everything, because it's all just relative existence. I know I exist because I'm thinking. I know I exist because I'm having this thought, and this thought produces an emotion, and blah, blah, blah. But trace all that back. Find out from where the source of the thought. So it really takes a lot of attention and a lot of diligence. But what else have you got to do? Just keep on that cycle of samsara, like keep on the wheel? Maybe. But maybe, maybe you can devote some energy into watching the thought process and then tracing it back, watching it so acutely that you can see from where the thoughts arise themselves. Like, just watch the thought arise, and it's usually I. Like Ramana Maharshi would say, the I thought is the thought, and that's the self-awareness is I. We are self-aware, aren't we? But we keep thinking that the source of this self-awareness comes from the body. Like, that's the problem. We think, well, this is the source of the I. It's coming from something physical, but it's not. It's one step beyond, and one step prior to physical. So watch that I, so it doesn't get to I am X. Whatever the X is, it doesn't matter, or he or she X. Whatever that is, if you can fine-tune your awareness to watch that arise, the awareness itself, this is really, really cool. The awareness itself burns that thought away. It stops it in its tracks. So you notice I, And if you don't notice it, it'll go I want this car, I want that, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm all the duality, all the cycle of samsara. But if you are aware of it, the awareness itself will burn it off, and it'll just go back, it'll stop in its tracks, I. And then it'll just subside back into the stillness, which is the source, which is your true self. And that's the peace, that's the contentment, that's the nirvana, the enlightenment.
Beautiful, beautiful. And maybe I should have done this earlier, but it seems like you've kind of actually presented a description of what, or a definition of Advaita, and maybe you could say just a bit more about that. You know, some of the viewers might not be so familiar with Advaita, so the term non-duality, it refers to what you've just described. It's like once you identify with the true self rather than the physical body and the thoughts that are in this limited physical body, there's you could say an associated phenomena of unity with everything, because you're no longer perceiving yourself as a distinct person, and maybe you could say this better than I'm saying it, but once you give up the idea that you are limited to this body and the thoughts that occur in this body, you can no longer perceive yourself as separate from the phenomena that are occurring around you. Would you say that that's accurate?
So, I'm starting to get into this, the non-dual community or whatever. Like I've just been by myself basically for a while here, but I'm seeing this kind of very subtle problem or roadblock arising with even non-duality, because I really think it's important to throw on Vedanta, Advaita, Vedanta. Okay, so Advaita is one, not two, and Vedanta is the end of the Vedas, the end of the teaching. All right, so you need to transcend any type of label. You can't even describe it's exactly what is not described. You are exactly what is not described. So don't even try to say that I'm one with the universe or anything. Just be it. Like that's the crux of the matter, is the experience, is the actualization of it. And the actualization of it is transcendent of mind. So you can't even say that it's anything. Like I can't even say that I'm one with the universe. Like that doesn't even, if there's no thoughts to arise, what does that even mean? What does universe even mean? What does one even mean? So it's tricky. Mind is really, really tricky. It knows all the little tricks. So don't hang on to anything.
Yeah.
Don't hold on. Like that's like it. You have to let everything go and just be completely the actualization of it. Abide as it. You are it. So don't try to define yourself. Like it's just a complete silence. As Ramana Maharshi would say, silence is the best teacher.
Gotcha.
So I don't even like non-dual. Like I don't even like any type of label at all.
Gotcha. Drop the habit of labeling things.
Yeah.
That's good.
But it takes diligence. Like it's not, and there's this thing about, well, you don't have to do anything, and that's to me pretty much complete bullshit, because you have people are holding on to the doing. So you have to not do. So you can't just go around with your normal level of human consciousness that everyone else is in and just say, well, this is it. Because it's obviously not it. Like, I know that I'm having a different experience than I did back then. Sure, back then, before this spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it, that was still there. It's always there, but I wasn't tuned into it. I didn't recognize it. I was the character in the movie. So you have to be completely diligent. And when we're talking, like, people are probably going to get a little, I don't know, it's the level of, sorry, my computer's doing something funky. So the level of intensity, right, and dedication, and that we're talking about, to be completely self-aware all the time, complete liberation, and to me that's it. Like, there's no half, well, I'm just going to play around in this realm and then be like liberated when I want to be and not liberated when I don't want to be. Like, we're talking about not even focusing on this realm. So, like, to always have that connection with Source, with Self, all the time is, it has to be your number one priority. Like, it has to be. Everything else can fade away. Nothing else matters. Like, you can make this dream, sure, it's nicer to have a nice dream, a pleasant dream, than a nightmare. But upon waking, did it really matter? Like, not really. Not upon waking. So, like, don't get caught up in the dream. Find self. Find out what that really is. Get to that space, that silence of just and experience that and find out if that's what you really want. Because we're really talking about complete contentment, the end of the cycle of samsara, just like we're talking about burning the end of karma. So if that's what you want, like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with playing the game. Go ahead, but you have to realize that every up has a down. It's Taoism, basic Taoism. Every up has a down. Every high has a low. So if you want to play the game, go ahead. But you have to know that every up has a down. And at the end of it all, it's completely level. So if you want the ups and downs, then go ahead and focus on this and chase that and do all that stuff. But if you really want absolute happiness and contentment and peace, then you really have to make that choice.
All right. I wonder if you might say a little bit about the thought-free state, and if you can use the term state, but because it seems as though, like you said earlier, this space between thoughts kind of expands and happens more frequently until it perhaps becomes uniform. It seems like different circumstances will be such that more thoughts are kind of flying around, if you will, and other circumstances lend themselves to this more silent quality, and then of course it seems like these apparent individuals have their own kind of momentum of thought that interacts with all that. Are you always in a thought-free state? Are there times where there seems to be more thought now than not? How would you characterize it?
Yeah, the thoughts that occur now are very fleeting. I certainly don't put any energy into them. So I never find myself just all of a sudden, where the hell have I been? Like just lost in my thoughts. That never happens anymore. The odd time a word or two might pop up, or a sign of like something in your mind's eye, like something like that will happen. It'll come in and I'll kind of see something, and then it fades, then it just goes away. So I think human consciousness as a whole, the outside the physical realm seems to mirror the thought realm. So if the average person is having 40,000 thoughts a day, and you just look around at like an average city or urban place, there's a lot of activity going on. There's a lot of noise and movement and sound and flashing lights and screens everywhere and music. And so I found myself drawn to just silence and nature and stillness. So spend a lot of time not around people, and especially not in the rat race. And I have an aversion to television. No, television is just terrible. Like, you just look around. It just seems like human consciousness is just speeding up. And it's because we're misidentifying that self-awareness. We all have self-awareness. It's wonderful. This human consciousness has this, I'm aware of self, but we just keep overlooking it. We just can't. Mind is always searching for the source of the I. What is this I? I'm aware of myself, but where is it coming from? And we just keep looking at it. We keep looking for it in the external, in the physical realm. But it's that which is looking. It's so simple, but we just keep missing it. And we keep missing the source. It just kind of has a feedback loop. And that feedback loop, the frequency seems to be speeding up with human consciousness. It just seems to be, I can't find the source of the I can't find this self-awareness. What am I aware of? And you just keep missing it a bit, and it just keeps iterating onto itself faster and faster and faster. And look at what is happening. We're messing up the environment. It's just such a subtle little shift in perspective can change the whole thing. Just be aware of what's aware. Just shift your awareness onto what is shifting the awareness. Just shift the awareness onto that which is shifting the awareness. And the mind will find it, and it'll recognize it right away and go, oh, that's it. That's it. And then mind will come back online and go around again, and then you'll find it again and just go, that's it. That's it. And then you'll be home.
Beautiful, beautiful. You're making me think. One of the most concrete examples of what you're describing is, say, like a drug addiction, where somebody's seeking something, some kind of satisfaction through drug use, and it's perhaps it has the most kind of negative consequences in the physical world when that's followed through. But that same dynamic could be applied to any kind of external seeking, whether it be money, sex,
food,
just having your attention in the external world, even in a very mundane way, So that's I love what you're saying there. I wonder if you could say a few words about compassion. I remember I went to an Advaita teacher once, Wayne Lickerman. I don't know if you've heard of him, and I asked him, do you have compassion for seekers? And he said no. So in a sense, the seeker doesn't really exist if there's no individual. This is kind of an intellectual trip a little bit, but how does compassion relate to this? Because I know that there are Advaita teachers who I believe are aware, who show a lot of compassion in the physical world. So I kind of associate it with compassion with a higher level of consciousness. What would you say about this principle?
Yeah, Ramana Maharshi had the same answer. Someone asked him if he felt compassion, and he said, no, if I felt compassion, I wouldn't be a jnani. So, again, you don't feel anything that can be described. So it's like, okay, so there's a couple of things. How can you have compassion for a character on a movie screen? Like that, like, I wish that I could make that character on that screen feel something other than what they're feeling, or experiencing something other than what they're experiencing. It's just playing out. It's a movie playing out on a screen. And sure, vicariously, we maybe, oh no, that poor person, we feel empathy, but it's just a movie, it's just like, and so that's one thing. It's like, well, first of all, you can't change anything. So you just have to watch it and just accept everything that's happening. And the second thing here is that, now this is really, really tricky, but your reality is your own. You are the only consciousness in your world. So taking the movie thing again, analogy. So in a movie theater, there's apparently a bunch of consciousnesses watching one reality, right? Like there's a bunch of people watching one reality happening on the screen. But what's really happening is the opposite of that, is that there's one consciousness watching a bunch of different movies. So that's what's really happening. So once you start recognizing if there's peace and contentment in your world, everything that you experience in your world, that's the only thing that there is in your world. It's really tricky, but it's completely self-evident. Like, you have to take everything as absolutely self-evident and don't read anything else into it. So what you're experiencing in your world, in your consciousness, that's the only thing that there is in that realm. So when there's enlightenment, there's only enlightenment. When you are enlightened, there is nothing else to do. There's no one else to save. It's done. That's it. It's done. The only thing to do is realize your enlightenment. That's the only thing to do. Everything's done. So the best thing you can do is to just realize your own enlightenment. Because then it's done. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you really have to start investigating this for yourself, though. Like, really, and what better objective or goal could there possibly be than to figure out this? Like, to really, like, that's what every single religion is pointing to, this divinity, that there is something else. There's something, like, they mix it all up when they try to define what it is. Like, it's streets of gold or like 27 virgins or you're like whatever. Like people come up with this stuff, but it's realizing your divinity. And that's what the truly enlightened beings have realized, is that it's here, it's now, it's who you are. And that's all that there is. There's no other goal. There's no other, that's the goal, is realize your own enlightenment, and it's done.
I love that. I love that. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at when I was talking to you about, the only reality is where I am. So currently I'm in this room, and this is all there really is. And if I start thinking about things that are not present, it's just thoughts. It's just in my mind. Even though I love the clarification you made that even this room that I appear to be in, it too is part of the dream, right? So yeah. So I guess one thing you kind of touched on earlier that maybe you could say one more word about is that, and I think Ramana addresses this somewhere, but the external observer will look at someone like Ramana and think that he's acting, that he's taking action. And I think, and maybe this can't be explained, as you said earlier, maybe it's not worthwhile to try and get your head around this, but it seems that really the jnani is they're just being, and then these phenomena appear to arise around them that are not necessarily normal. So the external person says that the jnani is doing it, but the jnani would assert that there's no individual action on the jnani's part. Is that, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Again, it's connection with that source where everything happens at once in perfect unity. I think some scientists are going to probably get upset, if any scientists will ever watch this, if I call it the wave function, because the wave function is everything happening at once. Like basically that's a kind of a simple way of putting it, is that everything happens at once. So a jnani would be just pure consciousness, which is that thing that's all happening all at once. So the mind will want to put it in some sort of linear form. Like that's what the mind does. It separates things, so it doesn't see the whole thing. It picks out something, that there's a person there and they're doing things, but from the higher perspective of the jnani, is he just sees everything happening at once. It's an expansion of consciousness where you just, again, it's an experience, but yeah, when there's no thoughts there anymore, there's no sense of any type of individual. It's just a witnessing the movie. So I don't think that's a very good answer, but
No, that's great. That's great.
I don't know. It's just, yeah, I don't know.
All right. One more thing I'd like you to hear you talk about is there's a principle in the Eastern tradition which says there are a variety of paths, if you will, that can lead to what you're talking about. And we had talked a little bit about how Ramana's is the most direct. But apparently there are these other paths which may not be as fast, but they can come to the same end, if you will. And so there's like service, there's Bhakti, or maybe Hatha yoga. These are other. There's like other ways, and then jnana, which might be the most direct. Can you say something about that? Why? Well, again, why? Well, just if you could, I guess for you, the direct path was the most appealing, and it seemed to happen very rapidly for you.
No. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that 14, 13 years is in any type of rapid form. But yeah, it's, I have to be just honest, and relate my own experience.
Yes.
So my own experience has been when I look back on it now, it's always just been one step. Like, it's been one step, and maybe I took it 37 million times, but it's always been one step, and that is to place awareness on the awareness, to just be aware of self. It's coming back to self-awareness, but the right self, not the self you think it is. So all these other steps, to me, if it requires more than one step, it's a waste of time. People who are watching this are probably ready. They've probably taken a lot of steps that have prepared them to take the last step, the final step. So I really encourage people who are watching this to just take that last step, because how much mind is required to transcend mind? It doesn't make any sense. Even at the most basic logical level, how do I use mind to transcend mind? If everything's in the present, everything's happening right now, present, like, you have to take everything as completely self-evident. How can you use mind to transcend mind? You can't. It's another trick of mind. So when you look back, after you take the final step onto the mountaintop, or whatever analogy you want to use, you look back and you might say, it might be logical, it might be accurate to say, well, I took that path there, but the last step is the same for everyone. It's the last step onto, and the last step is really the transcending of mind. So you have to transcend all seeking. This is going to be tough for a lot of seekers because they're so wrapped up in identifying themselves with the seeking that's a new identity. Like, that's their...
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to get at that because one thought that kept coming up is, are you familiar with Adyashanti? And he was in the Buddhist tradition, and he's a teacher of these principles, and he relates the experience of meditating for years and years and years, and he went to he was at a luncheon or an event of some kind, and he heard two other monks talking, and they were saying how they'd been meditating for years and nothing was happening, and this kind of started to work on him, and finally he reached a point where he was doing extensive meditation, extensive sitting, and he reached a point where he said he gave up and stopped. And at that point where he gave up, there was a shift in consciousness.
Mm.
And to me, that's emblematic of many who are on a so-called path with a delineated series of steps that are required to reach a certain point. So I like what you're saying. Now you can't extrapolate from that and say that he should have gone some other way, because that's what occurred, right?
Well, again, that's trickier of the mind. So you can't, if you try to find out where you are on the path, you're off the path while you're trying to figure out where the heck you are. So when you label something, that is the reality that you are experiencing while you're labeling it. Like that's where you are, that's where you appear to be. So you're always one step away. It's just one step. So, and the step is awareness. So when you're aware that you're fixated on a thought, thinking, use that awareness to come back to self. Just be the awareness. That's the step. It's just be the awareness. So you're using, I don't even really know what the mechanism is, how that awareness comes on. I really don't even know. But when you're aware, when you become aware that you're in thought, you shift that focus from thought onto being. And another way of putting that is the awareness that you're thinking itself just is the being, and it stops the thinking.
Right, right.
So, and you use that, not even, like, this is the really tricky part when we're talking about complete liberation and all that jazz, complete disillusionment. Even when you're focused on an object. So when you like, I can tell now when my awareness is out or when it's in. So you can be, if your awareness is on a sense object, you use that awareness the same way you do as a thought, and it immediately connects you back with self, into being. So that's what I mean. It's constant. It's constant awareness. That's what it is. It's unwavering, unintermittent self-awareness. So you can't draw out. You're every time that your awareness is drawn out completely, so you're not in contact with that self anymore, then you're in the illusion.
You know what you're reminding me of? I think there's some Buddhist statements that they would say are required for an aspirant, and it's something like right awareness, right thinking, right action, and I think they relate to what you're saying. The only difference is it seems like you're in the place where you experience this, and it's not a dogmatic instruction that you're trying to assert on your behavior. You know what I'm saying? So
that seems to me like trying to grow the tree from the bark in. Like it seems almost like everything seems to grow from the inside out. So it's kind of the reverse, I think, of that. I mean, it's you can't say that stuff doesn't help, I guess. But to me, those are just preliminary steps, again, to the final step. And just why not just jump to the final step? Whoever is listening to this right now is privy to the final step. So just try it out. Take it. Like maybe all those steps that you took to get to reading, to listening to this video, watching this video, led you to this final step.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now take it. Like just take it.
Right.
And I just encourage people to, and you have to it has to be validated or validated with your own experience in your own life. But for heaven's sakes, at least try it. You know, like you have to actually do it. And that's the thing that I see, that I really feel strongly about, is that you have to actualize it. Do it. It's real. It's not just you have to engage in it. Engage in it.
Yeah, I like that. And I think this may be a very slight distinction I'd like to add, but where you're talking about you can't use the mind to get over the mind, and yet you're emphasizing the need to apply this effort for this last step. So it's like I'm thinking of there's an analogy in the Eastern tradition of using a thorn to remove a thorn. And I think if you read some of Ramana's teachings, he came across this. It's like at a certain point, necessity for action falls away. And this is what I was getting at earlier with asking you. You know, you said initially you're trying to find this space between thoughts, which probably in the beginning was difficult. And then this space expanded and happened more frequently until it became permanent. So that it appears as if you applied effort to a certain point, and now the state is recognized, so effort is no longer required. So to me, there isn't, it's like as you're getting close like this, there's like a little bit of mind applied in the right way, and then you flip out of the mind.
Mm. Yeah, that's an accurate description, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like when you're first learning to do something, it seems really hard. Like you have to put a lot of effort into it, and it seems like arduous and just like, how am I ever going to learn this? Like, this is impossible. Like going from 40,000 thoughts a day, like to 40, like what? Like, no, but it's worthwhile. Like just do it. And then, like you say, the reward is that it becomes effortless. Like life itself becomes effortless. Like, can you imagine not having any stress and just not exerting any effort? It's like, so if you have that feeling of completion, like you've completed, like you got your degree, or you just got the kids to bed and the laundry's folded, or, something like that. And you just sit down on the couch and just go, like that feeling of completion, it's just like, and it's kind of like that all the time. It's just all the time. Like I'm done, it's just effortless.
Feels like there's a letting go, and I also love this quality of fearlessness. It's there's no longer any reason to be afraid of anything. It's kind of like a sense of.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think all fear is based on this feeling, this idea of non-existence. Like if I'm this physical body, or if I'm my thoughts, and my thoughts stop, then I no longer exist. Or if I'm this body and my body decays and goes away, then I just simply don't exist anymore. But when you don't have that anymore, when you know that your existence itself, then where's the fear of death? Like, there's no fear anymore. Like, I think all fear stems from this one enormous, and what could be more terrifying than non-existence? Like, that's a pretty, and the reason why the mind revolts at it is because it's impossible. It's revolting because it's an impossibility. Fear is really just saying, no, that's ridiculous. Like, you can't not exist. And that's really what fear is, I think, is it's a revolt against the inherent knowledge that I can't not exist because I'm existence itself.
I love that, Roy. And you're making me think of, a very popular focal point in Buddhism is this state of so-called emptiness. But it's like emptiness and fullness are the same thing, and neither of them can really be defined. So it's like there isn't. You don't have to have these labels.
It's just not dropping away of all concepts.
Yeah. Well, is there? Before we wrap this up, I would like you, if you will, to please give all ways that people can access you. You have you've got a blog, and you just got your website up. So can you tell us the location of the blog, the location of the website, the books you've written, and any other references you'd like to share with people?
Yeah, well, just everything can be accessed through the website.
Okay.
So the website is www.onesteppath.com.
Spelled out. Yeah.
Yeah, one step path, all like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add in closing?
Just that it's real. Like I think a lot of people don't even consider that, like, all this nirvana and heaven and enlightenment, like, it just seems like it's so, or to be happy all the time and not have stress, and it's real. Like, the teachings are true. Like, it's worthwhile. Like, if it's peace and contentment that you really want, if you really ask yourself, what do I really want? Do I want peace and contentment, like just perfect peace and contentment? Then give this a try. Put it into actualization in and as your life. Make it your number one priority. Give it a whirl for a while, and if you don't like it, then continue on doing your ups and downs thing. There's nothing wrong with, like, roller coaster rides and stuff. But for me, I'm done. And maybe people who are watching this want to get off the ride as well. So, but for heaven's sakes, try it out. Try it out. It can only be validated by your own experience, but try it out.
I love what you're saying, and you're making me think of, like, ripening fruit. Different fruits ripen at different times, and when the fruit's ripe, it's ripe. And there's no need to expect every piece of fruit on a tree to ripen at the same time. I'd also add that though taking up what you're advocating will not result in an increased bank account or more women or I don't know, whatever externally, praised item you can think of, it does appear to have a tremendous effect on society. And I'd say an example of that is like Ramana Maharshi. Now, you don't do these. I mean, it's in a way misleading to say you should do this for some reason, as if there's a carrot and stick kind of progression,
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I think it's evident in the dualistic world, if you will, that somebody like a Ramana Maharshi, when he became an expression of what you've been talking about, it had very broad ramifications for even global society. So whenever this occurs, it's very beneficial for society on the physical level in ways that are kind of hard to quantify.
Well, and for Paul Kelly.
Right.
Because you're the only consciousness in your realm. So Paul Kelly should just realize his enlightenment, and it's done.
Right. All right, Roy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Take care, man.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
You're really good at this. You should make more of these. You're a really good interviewer, man. You made it so smooth.
Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing it. I do. I've got about 100 of these vegan videos, and I thought
wow.
I thought about going into that with you a little bit. Because as you alluded to, we are destroying the planet, and that's a big motivation behind my veganism. But but I know there's a detachment that occurs that it kind of means morality becomes perhaps different when you're as detached as you are. You know what I mean? Traditional moral guidelines or whatever. But yeah, if you're interested, check out some of them. But I love doing this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would say you're a natural, and you've got enough experience that you know what the hell you're talking about when it comes to this non-dual thing. So it's really good.
Well, thanks.
I encourage you.
I think what's cool with you is that you kind of just you read books, but you didn't seem to get bogged down in books. It's like you did just enough to get you doing what you needed to take that step. At least now you said it took like 14 years, but it seems like something about the way you went through it. It's very grounded and it just feels really right. So That was good.
Right on, man. All right. Well, thanks again. And I guess I'll edit this and throw it on my channel. I really, really appreciate it. Like I feel really good about the whole thing.
That's cool, Roy. Let me give you a tip.
Yeah.
When you process this,
Yeah.
these files can be pretty big.
Yeah.
So the way you process it will determine whether you're able to process it, because if you use parameters that make the file bigger, it can get so big that when you try to process it, your computer doesn't have the capacity. So if you see that happening, you'll get a little blip, and it'll tell you that you're running out of room on your hard drive. So what you can do is just cancel the process and then reset the parameters. If you do something like, it's going to give you some options when you try to process the file. I don't know. The first thing you'll do is after
it's all so good. I want to just play the whole flipping thing, though.
Oh yeah. You'll be able to play this whole thing.
Okay.
But what you do is, and you can actually, there is an option in there that you can break it up into 10-minute segments if you want. A lot of people say that the best way to do a YouTube upload is 10 minutes.
I've seen that, yeah.
I did that originally, but I like the longer format, and I just like to keep it complete. But when you hang up on me, you're going to get a little dialog box that appears, and it's going to say that would you like to edit the call? And if you click that, it'll process the video into a form where you can start editing it. And that's what I like most about this software, is the way that you can edit it. It's going to let you put you as the primary focus. In fact, you can put you as the focus for the whole thing if you want.
I love that.
No, well, the interview, it's your interview, right? So what I like about this is I can control how much I'm seen and how much you're seen. In some of the softwares, it's like you have both people all the time, and that's okay, but I like it better where the focus is you.
Okay, so I'm not going to lose I'm not going to dummy this up and lose this whole thing somehow, am I? Like, if I just hang up and close my computer, it's going to be saved?
Yeah, the only thing is, that little box that you opened up earlier, that box, when we close this is going to be a historical call, if you will, and it's going to be in this little bank in there.
Okay.
That's one of your calls. And if you do other calls, you know what you could even do? I'll tell you what. Let me hang up and I'll call you again, okay?
All right.
And watch what happens when I hang up. All right.
All right.